I decided that it was important for me to do a second reading TBR for November because I have decided, as you can probably tell from the B-roll, to completely embrace Christmas reading at this point. I celebrate Christmas. I love Christmas. I love everything about Christmas. Buying gifts for people is one of my very favorite things, almost as much as getting gifts from people. I am going to, I'm gonna throw out my TBR for the month. That's right here, this Christmas tree. All I can think about is Christmas. So that's where I'm gonna put my energy. And last night I picked 4 books from my Christmas TBR. Well, I actually picked more than 4 books, but I read the first chapter of multiple books and landed on these 4 as the first 4 that I'll read. Come on, Joey. Hi. Hi, little one. You gonna come up here? Come on. Come on. Whoa. Soft surfaces are tough. Yeah, so in lieu of traveling home for Christmas, I and my dog will stay right here home for Christmas. Everything's working out, even though nothing seems to be cooperating, if that makes sense. And there will be lots of great things that happen for the Christmas season, but for whatever reason on Thursday, I really, really got hit with it. Like this feeling of, it's time. It's time. And so last night I pulled all my books off of the table, which you probably saw from my 25 books challenge video when I pointed them out, and pulled those all off the table. And because I'm starting earlier than anticipated, I pulled some more off of my shelves. I have 2 books that came into me as pre-orders this year that I have not read yet, one by Kristen Hanna and one by Jenny Colgan. And then I have some old favorites that I'm going to read. The stack that I'm going to read this week is representative of all those things. So first, last night, I read the first chapter in this one. This is 12 Days at Bleakley Manor, Once Upon a Dickens Christmas, Book 1 by Michelle Greep. And the first chapter of this sets it up with our heroine, I don't know, Clara Chapman, and it's 1850, and she's gone to visit somebody who doesn't have much money and to be kind of like missions work, I guess. This is a Christian fiction book, and I actually didn't know that when I purchased it, but I'm cool with that. And so she is doing some church work or some missions work, and she's helping out somebody who is a lot less fortunate than her. She gets into a coach, a taxi or whatever it would be called in 1850, and goes home and notices that there's a strange carriage sitting outside of her aunt's home. She herself, I think, is an orphan. And if you watch any of my other videos, there's a couple where I tell you about some favorite books of mine, and I have begun to notice a theme that I really love books with the orphan trope. So there's an orphan. Clara is an orphan, and she sees that there is a unknown carriage outside her aunt's house, and she goes in and is handed a letter. And she thinks that she'll give it to her aunt, whoever this person is who's delivering this letter, this messenger who must be associated with the carriage out front, and it must be for her aunt. But he's like, no, I have to deliver this directly into your hands. And so there's kind of this free verse type poem thing in the letter, and it says that basically you need to come to Bleakley Manor, and if you do, it doesn't say this, but it implies this, and if you do and you survive the weekend's events, then you will receive £500 that is due to you. And she's like, I don't think I should do this, and her aunt's like, I think you have to take a chance. So that's the first chapter, and it was intriguing, and it was written in a fun way, and I think that I will really enjoy it. I think it'll be a really quick read. Next is this one, In Love with a Haunted House. This is an independent printing. It is printed by the author. Kate Goldman is the author. And I have owned this for I think 6 years, and I have never read it. I love haunted houses. I love old houses. I love those ghost hunting shows. And it is my dream to not own a haunted house, but to own an old house and to refinish it. And I don't know if that will ever happen, but it is something that I would love to do. So this book, which has Christmas vibes on the front, but the first chapter, it's the summertime. So I don't know what'll happen with that. But this book, the first chapter starts with our main character, Mallory Clark, having been summarily rejected by the man that she's been living with in Chicago for a while, and she has no job. I think she went to college in Chicago and she has no job, and now she has no boyfriend and she has no money. And so her mom just happens to call while she's in the process of almost being evicted, because when he moves out, she has to redo her lease agreement and requalify for the apartment. She knows it's not going to happen. And so her mother calls and is like, hey, you know that weird Victorian house that just happens to be right next to ours? The old woman who lived in there, who we forgot even existed because she hasn't come out of her house in years, died. And this is how it happened. She hadn't paid the grounds people. And so the foreman of the grounds crew knocked on the door. She answered the door in her old tattered wedding dress. Anybody else getting Great Expectation vibes here, Mrs. Havisham? So she answers the door in her old tattered wedding dress, and she's very excited, and she's like, oh, have you come for my wedding? I'm getting married in a couple of hours. I just have to bake the cake. And the guy is like, okay, she's nuts. So he calls 911, and the people who come to assess her decide that for her own good, she needs to be taken into custody. She's very, very old. I think she's in her 90s, and she's just, you know, rummaging around in her kitchen looking for cake pans and talking about the wedding that she's about to have. And she's in her old, you know, 70-year-old wedding dress. And she starts to put up a fight when they try to take her out of the house, saying she can't miss her own wedding. She's not going to let that happen. And as they get her to the doorstep, she shouts, I do, and dies. Ha ha. And her mom is like, do you want to buy this house? And the girl's like, are you nuts? Why would I want to buy this house? And her mom goes into the fact that the outside looks great, but the inside is really run down. She hasn't been able to keep it up. And so she is going to suggest that her daughter buy the house. So I guess her daughter's always, like me, always wanted to own an old house. This one is right next door to mom. She, you know, her Chicago life has crumbled conveniently for our story. And she should come home, purchase this house, and refinish it, and then she could sell it. She could flip it, right, for a lot of money, because it's this beautiful old Victorian mansion in a Chicago suburb. So that's where we are, and it's super intriguing. And, you know, I think that probably most everything has been revealed to us right there in the first chapter, but it'll still be fun to read. Just so you know what's going on right now. And he keeps scratching me. Sorry for the fingers in the camera. I'm just filming this on my phone while I sit on the couch by the tree. By the tree. So anyway, the next book I read is one of my brand new ones. This is Christmas at the Island Hotel, a novel by Jenny Colgan. I read Christmas on the Island a while ago, whenever that came out, and it feels, as I read this one or started to read this one, it felt like maybe it was too long ago. So I might revisit that one. I've already downloaded it on my Libby app, and actually I don't like Libby. I use over whatever it is. I don't remember what it's called. It's not Overload. It's not Overload, and it's not Overlord. Overdrive. That's what it is. Overdrive. I use the Overlord app. But it's basically Libby, and everybody says Libby. But I've already downloaded the first book about these people on the island of Mure. M-U-R-E. How do you say that? Anyway, I've already downloaded it, and I'm going to re-listen to that tomorrow, probably, starting tomorrow, before I read this. So this will probably be the last book that I read this week, because I really feel like I want that background information again. But this one starts, I didn't actually read the first chapter. I read the preface, and it's, you know, just a really sweet interaction between a sister and her niece and her brother, and how she has a baby, and kind of setting up like the need for her to help somebody. I don't remember who these people are really. It's so sad. But the need for her to start to help this new hotel get set up because of something which I do remember, which is a spoiler from the first book, so I won't mention it here and now. You could read this as a standalone, I think, but because I remember vaguely the storyline and the characters from the first book, I want that backstory when I go into this one. I personally want that backstory, but I don't think it's necessary. I think that she set it up really well, but I just want to rewind a bit before I read that one. And then the next book I'm going to read is one I would love to revisit. I've already read this one and really enjoyed it, and I'm going to read it again. And the first chapter I reread last night. I might be able to reread all the Anita Hughes books. And if you haven't read them, there are 4 Christmas ones right now. I don't read her other non-Christmas books, although I'm sure they're lovely, but I just really love her Christmas settings. And there are 4 of them: Christmas in London, Christmas at the Chateau, Christmas in Vermont, and Christmas in Paris. And I'm going to reread Vermont this week, and I might reread London as well. That's my second favorite of hers. My first favorite of hers is Paris, but I reread it last year, so I don't know if I'm ready to reread it yet again. But every year I reread one of them usually, and this year it's Vermont. And the first chapter starts with Emma, and she has just gone through a breakup. She dumped her boyfriend because she has commitment phobia, and dates people for about a year and then gets rid of them. So she felt that he was about to propose to her, and so she summarily got rid of him, and that meant that she missed out on her Christmas trip to Hawaii with him. And so she is kind of trying to figure out what to do with her Christmas, but really she wants, like in the first chapter, her goal is to offload this beautiful piece of jewelry that he had given her to wear to a work function of his, at which she agreed to go, even though she knew she was going to dump him, because she felt like it was unfair to dump him right before his office Christmas party. And so he ends up taking her, and she realizes that it's a terrible idea because everybody's oohing and awing over how perfect they are together. This is their first time meeting her. It will be their only time meeting her. And she realizes that this was not a great idea. She also, because she wasn't ready to tell him yet that she was going to dump him, even though she knew she had already made this decision, she also had the guilt of saying yes and accepting this piece of jewelry, which is engraved and says something to the effect of, you know, you have my heart. And he refuses to take it back after she breaks up with him just a little bit later. And so she wants to offload it, and she doesn't care how much money she gets or whatever. She just goes into a pawn shop in Greenwich Village and just takes the offer, right? As the man is getting her money, she realizes that there's a watch that looks really familiar to her in the case, and she asks to see it. She flips it over, and lo and behold, there is the engraving that she put on it for an ex-boyfriend from college days who she was completely in love with, who she broke up with for mysterious reasons, and non-mysterious reasons as well. He was moving to London, and she was not. But there's an added element that is not revealed to us yet, but is hinted at in the first chapter. She goes to visit her best friend, who tells her that the watch is a sign of synchronicity, that it's not just a coincidence, it's a coincidence with meaning, and that if she will pursue that, like whatever that synchronistic thing is asking, opportunity is asking her to pursue, then it will lead to a life-changing moment. And she's like, no, it's just coincidence. But you know in the back of her mind that she's thinking this is way more than coincidence as well. So that's the first chapter of that book. And it's a delight. And if you haven't read it, you really should. And then today, I'm also going to read this one, which is called Keeping Christmas. And it is a memoir. It's an Edwardian memoir. And in the B-roll, I show you some of the pictures from this book. It's about Christmas during the Edwardian era, and it is written by William F. Stricker, and it is the true story of his memories of Christmas during the Edwardian period in New York. And the first chapter I read last night was just delightful. It was about how he remembered his father and mother always waiting until such a last moment to bring home a Christmas tree, that the people at the lot were fairly, begging them and paying people to take them away, that the tree that his father would bring home was often much too large for the space, but his father didn't want to cut the tree or trim the tree in any way, not decorate trim, but like trim the tree in any way, and so he preferred, as the picture shows from the B-roll, to have the top of the tree bend. He would secure the tree. He had a loop on the wall specifically for the Christmas tree, and he would loop rope through that and had a pulley system to make sure that the tree wouldn't fall over. And this was very important because after the decorations were put up, the father would then take however much time it needed to make sure that the entire tree would be lit without the possibility of anything catching on fire, and they would put penny candles on the tree limbs and watch them burn. And he said it took about 20 minutes for the candles to burn out. And then he talks about how they'd wake up on Christmas morning and they would have to go to church, and then they would take time to look at the nativity set, and then the village kids, or not the village, it's New York, the neighborhood kids would gather together and begin to kind of compare and contrast what they thought would be under their tree, and the families would scooch their kids away before they had a chance to do too much comparison, to alleviate any disappointment or big heads that might come. And then they would get home and they would have to go in through the kitchen door because the main door would have led to all of the, frantic secret Christmas preparations. The kids would eat their breakfast, but he says he could never remember what was on the menu for Christmas breakfast morning because all they could think about as kids was getting through the door into the main room. So after breakfast, they'd be let into like this antechamber room, which I think was the dining room, and by the fireplace in the dining room would be beautiful, pristine, brand new white stockings filled with fruits and nuts, and hard candies, and down at the bottom a brand new penny for each. And he says that he knew that he had exhausted the contents of his stocking when he reached that brand new penny. And then once all of the stockings had been unpacked and everybody had found their penny, then the parents would open the door to the other room, quote unquote, and direct them to turn directly to the right. And so these doors would swing open and the kids would rush in and they'd turn directly to the right, where they would see just piles and piles of their toys that they were getting for Christmas. But they also each had one special toy. And this was so interesting to me, and it makes so much sense to me as well for the time period. but they each had one very special, very expensive toy that they only got to play with for the couple of days of Christmas celebration every year. The toy would be brought out every year, once a year, for a couple of days at Christmas. And for the girls, that was they each had a very large, at one point it would have been life-size to them, doll, porcelain doll with a wool stuffed body and human hair wigs, and really delicately painted faces, probably imported, I would think. I get that feeling. And they would have, and one of the sisters' dolls, when you squeezed the stomach, would say, "Mama." And they had, what the other sister had, her doll's eyes opened and shut when she was, laying flat or sitting up. So really, really interesting. And then there's talk of his train set. And this train set was an electric train set, but they didn't, in the house that he first received it in, they weren't wired for electricity. And so his father set up a battery system to run it. And any time that friends came over when the train set was out, they had to bring their own batteries if they were going to participate in playing with the train set, because anyway, they had to bring their own batteries. And then when they moved, because it's hinted at that they move, he said, not hinted at, it's stated plainly that they move eventually. And when they would bring the train set out, when they moved, the father still didn't set it up, even though this house was wired for electricity. He didn't connect it to the wiring, because he didn't want it to raise the electric prices. He talks about how before this, or some friends had trains that worked on I'm forgetting all my words, but like they had their own mechanism within them that you would wind and then you could set it down on the track. But he said this was really annoying because you had to have multiple people help you, because you'd have to wind for every car on the train, and you'd have to hold the wheels that would move the train along the track. You'd have to hold them all still before you set them down. Otherwise, they would run at different speeds, or they would run out completely and then you wouldn't make it around the track. So that sounds like it adds its own kind of fun element to it, but also very annoying. And he says before that, and this was just shocking to me, but before that, these children's trains were they were run by steam, actual steam, and they had actual boilers in them that moved them along. They were literally little miniature, like, steam trains that kids would heat water in and run around these tracks. I can't imagine how many burns happened in the Victorian and Edwardian period because of steam train toys. That's just shocking to me. But it's fascinating, and it's not so foreign as Victorian Christmas might feel. It does feel a lot like Christmas today, but there are significant elements that are incredibly different to what we have today. So those are the 4 books that I'm going to read this week, and I'm so excited. They all sound so great. If you have read any of them, or you decide to read any of them, please do let me know. I would love to discuss them. People don't usually like to discuss Christmas books, but I think that they're awesome, and I really enjoy reading them. Before I read today, though, I am going to enjoy a nice gigantic bowl of the soup that I've been simmering all day in my crock pot. then while I'm eating that, I'm gonna watch. I love Christmas movies and I love scary movies. I think this one is more of a slasher type scary, which is meh for me, so I'm gonna watch it during the daytime. I'm much more into the haunted house vibes, but that's okay. I'm gonna enjoy this. I'm going to eat my soup and keep snuggling this little dude right here, and then I'm gonna read. It's Sunday and I'm gonna enjoy it to the fullest. Yeah, so see you in the coming week. I have a couple other videos planned. This was not planned, so I'll move forward ahead with those as was planned, and upload this one today as well, which I will edit after I eat my soup and while I watch Black Christmas. Have a great day. Enjoy your Sunday. I just have to add that as soon as I finished the video, I got up to get my soup and dude stole my seat. This is what he wanted the entire time. Just to steal my seat by the Christmas tree. He didn't want love and affection. He just wanted my seat.